This is the Improved Photography Podcast, episode number 165. This episode is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is the easiest way to create a beautiful website, blog, or online store for you and your ideas. Squarespace features an elegant interface, beautiful templates, and incredible 24/7 customer support. Start building your website today at squarespace.com and enter offer code IMPROVE at checkout to get 10% off. And by Acronis. Manually copying photos to an external hard drive is only part of your backup plan. What's your complete on- and off-site plan to back up your priceless photos and protect your perfectly tweaked computer and photo app settings? Celebrate World Backup Day with Acronis and receive a bonus license of its award-winning True Image Backup solution. Visit trueimage.com/improve to learn about this bonus license deal. Well, welcome back to the Improved Photography Podcast. Today, I am joined by Mr. Nick Page, as always, and a new voice on the show is Stephen Nolly. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks
Very
for
nice to
having
be
me.
here.
Well, Stephen, we're going to get to know you a little bit more during the show and talk a little bit about video, because that's one of the things that you do a lot, especially shooting with Magic Lantern firmware on your camera. And
Right.
so, but before we get to that, we want to talk a little bit about some of the questions that have come in from the Improved Photography community. Rainey Lee Tubbs has a little bit of highlight exposure anxiety, and she wants to know how to either turn on the highlight warning on the camera or just what she should be doing to make sure she's not overexposing the highlights. So I'll give the kind of basic information, then I'll throw it over to you guys. When you take a picture, the camera can only capture a certain dynamic range. If some things are going to be too bright and some things are going to be too dark to fit in one picture, and so they're just completely white or completely black with no texture or detail in them. And so on most cameras, you can turn on your highlight priority, so that after you take a picture on the back of the camera, it's going to show your picture and it will just blink anything that's pure white, anything that's overexposed, and then you'll know that you need to change your exposure to not use those highlight priorities. So right now, right this second on your camera, guys, this is your survey. Do you have highlight warnings turned on?
Probably.
I think I do. Yeah.
So I use it. It totally depends on the type of photography I'm doing that day. So if I'm doing like landscape photography, I always shoot with my highlight alert on, just because I'm wanting to capture the entire dynamic range. I really care about the highlights anytime that I'm shooting a landscape image. But if I'm shooting portraits, I don't care so much. And anytime that I'm showing the back of my camera to the client, I don't want to have those annoying blinkies turning on and off, because they're not going to understand what they're looking at. They're going to think that something is wrong with the photo. So in those cases, I usually turn it off. So I'm a Canon shooter. I kind of only speak for the Canon side. I'm not even sure if the vocab is the same. The terminology is the same with other camera systems. But what you're wanting to turn on is highlight alert. And you can just go into your camera menu. It's going to be in one of the main parts of the menu in most cameras. And you want to enable highlight alert. And that way it's going to bring up your blinkies and tell you anytime you've overexposed your highlights. And if you're shooting in manual, it's super easy to fix. If you're shooting in an automatic mode, you're going to have to, if you're overexposing your highlights, you're going to have to add a whole bunch of negative exposure compensation to try to bring back those highlights. So in some types of photography, it's really, really important to protect those highlights.
Right. I mean, the reason you want to protect the highlights is because once it's blown out, there's no information there, and even if you take it into Lightroom or Photoshop, it's pure white on that pixel, and there's no other information to pull. If you underexpose a little, depending on your camera and your sensor, a lot of times you can bring up those shadows and start to recover some detail. There'll be noise. You can deal with noise. There are ways to deal with noise, but if you've blown out the pixel, all you have is pure white, and there's really nothing. There's really nothing else you can extract from that other than pure white.
Right.
Yeah, you can pull back a little bit. I mean, if we have just barely clipped our highlights, you can pull some data out of there, because remember, the highlight priority is just based on the JPEG of that picture, but you're gonna have the RAW, so you can pull back a tiny bit. It's it's better if you just don't overexpose it to begin with. I almost never use the blinkies. And the reason I almost never use the blinkies is they bother me. A lot of times I want the background to be white, and I can't even pay attention to my picture because things are flashing at me as I'm trying to do photography. You know, you shoot somebody on a white background, it's going to be blinking like crazy. It's supposed to be. You can't even see the picture. Or sometimes I'm taking, candids of my kids. Well, I don't really care if the background is overexposed. I want the background to be overexposed to have this nice, bright, clean feeling. I just am paying attention to the kid. But you do need to pay attention to your highlights. And if I'm shooting landscapes, yeah, it makes sense to do it there. I don't go into the trouble of actually changing it, but it makes perfect sense to turn on the blinkies when you're shooting landscapes because you'd pretty much never want to overexpose highlights in a landscape. That's just not really something that you do unless you're shooting bracketed shots or something. And so I don't do it just because it bothers me, and I'm not going to set up a million of those settings that I only sometimes use. I will just watch the histogram as I shoot, and even just look at the JPEG preview. I can recognize it if I'm getting really close to there after you've done it enough times. But I think it's a useful thing. I just think it usually gives people exposure anxiety, and it makes them freak out about it. And a lot of the time, you want parts of the picture to be white. It's okay.
Right. White exists in nature, and that's a totally okay thing to have. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of rolling back to another type of photography that it is actually kind of handy to have that highlight alert on is a couple weeks ago when I was photographing wine bottles, I needed my background to be complete white, or at least very close to it, to where I didn't have tons of editing to do in post. And so I had my highlight alert on, making sure that I was getting the background white, but nothing on the bottle was blowing out. So another case, if you're needing to have absolute white for your background, it is kind of useful to have that highlight alert on, just so you know how close you are to getting that complete white.
Cool. Well, the next question comes from Justin Rogers, who is making a trip to Ireland. How do you? I can't even do Ireland. All I know is one time I knew a guy from Ireland who was just he was awesome, and he had such a great accent. He was in my house one day, and he says, "It matters" when we're in an argument instead of "it matters." It's just fun. I always like that. I should plan a trip to Ireland. Anyway, he was planning his trip, and he would like an app that will help him to plan his photo spots that he's stopping at as he travels. So it looks like he's not really looking for an app just with photo spot ideas, but something just to help plan where he's going to stop on a trip. He's been looking at Trip-O-Matic, but is there anything that you guys use for this?
I was going to kind of throw this back to you, Jim, because one of the things that I've always been curious of is how to make custom Google Maps. And I know it's possible.
Oh, yeah.
But it's something that I've never really done, and I want to know how to do, because how useful would that be to just add little pins to a custom Google map, be able to bring that up on your phone and be able to drive right there. So I was going to throw this back to you because I really don't know.
This is like a boomerang question. I answer your question with a question. Okay, the way that you do this is it's complicated. Google Maps is kind of a weird interface. If you just go to the regular old Google Maps, you can't do this. You have to specifically Google My Maps by Google. Okay. If you search My Maps, then it brings up something that you can create your own custom map. So I have my Iceland photo locations that I've been gathering. Anytime I see an awesome photo online that's Iceland, boom, I find the location, do whatever I can. I'll message the people and say, hey, where is this? And I'm adding it to my Iceland map. And then it's plotted on here so that once you have it on a big map, because otherwise, you just have this list of photo locations and you're just going to be traveling randomly between them. And so this is a great tool for planning a trip because now that I have all my spots on here, I could easily see, it's kind of the southeastern side of Iceland that most of my best photo locations are on. And so we don't want our hotel to be in Reykjavik like the last time we went there. let's just stay over here in this area where we have much quicker access to the majority of the best photo locations. And I also separate them, like green is the very best photo locations, yellow's okay, and red's just like, stop by if you're bored one day. And so by having that, it makes trip planning just super fast. And then, if you shoot a location and you're like, oh, this was okay, but the conditions aren't quite right yet, you pull up your map and you can instantly see what's right around you is the next best location. So I really like using it for that.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, I've heard, and I keep getting things on Kickstarter and things like that. There are apps that are developed by photographers where it's exactly like that, and they crowdsource information from people. It'll take their photos from their iPhones or whatever with geotags, plot them on the map, show you where the most popular spots are and what photos are taken there. The problem with, I haven't seen any of these really take off because they're crowdsourced. They really need a lot of community support. So I haven't seen an app really come to the forefront, but the technology is definitely there to share.
I couldn't agree more. This crowdsourced, it's not a good solution for photo locations because you see like just locations that aren't interesting that get put on there because you have photographers of all skill levels who are submitting locations. Yeah. And as you improve in your photography, you usually become not only a little bit more picky about the locations you choose, but also you find that some locations just work better for a photo than others, even if the other locations are beautiful. I could take you right now to 10 gorgeous places in Idaho that just aren't really a great photo. There's just not a good put together composition, even though it's a beautiful spot. And that's the problem with many of them.
So this is in a roundabout way kind of connected, but this is loosely connected. One of the things that I've been doing is I like to go to waterfall survey websites. And one of the things that they have is a downloadable file that you can open up inside of Google Earth. And it puts pins on all the waterfalls inside Google Earth for that area. You can click on each waterfall and it gives you photos, information on how difficult it is to hike to, and then all the other information that you could want. So it's all right there inside of Google Earth where you can see where it is in relation to roads and parking lots and stuff. And then you also have photos to kind of compare it to see whether that's somewhere that you even want to go anyways. So that's the way I've been finding waterfalls. You can find all kinds of other custom maps if you just do a search for, Google Earth map or Google Earth pins or locations, and then open those up inside of Google Earth, because Google Earth itself is so powerful. It's nice anytime you can integrate that with things that you're interested in, whether it's historical places or whatever kind of vacation you're going on. Finding a map for that works inside of Google Earth is you can burn hours doing it because it's so entertaining. So that's what I like to do.
In Google Earth, you can also choose what time of day you're going to be at a specific location. So, I mean, my folks live in Colorado. So while sunrise and sunset has a specific time according to the horizon and curvature of the Earth, the mountains will disturb when you actually start losing light. So you can go into Google Earth, put in what time you're going to be at a specific location, and see what time the sun actually starts going around these mountains from a specific location at a specific angle, and kind of mock up your shot before you actually get there.
Yep. So many cool features in Google Earth.
Yeah. There is, and this is one area that I think photographers often skimp on, is the planning the shoots before you go. And that it's a kind of a painful process. I don't like the trip planning aspect of what I do, but if you put in that time to know when the light's going to be there, to really research a location, to get an idea of your compositions before you get there, that's where most of my best photos are made, or when I've really paid the price in planning to have it ready. All right, the next question comes from Glenn George. Glenn basically wants us to know how we can start dipping our foot into water, dipping our foot into videography. And he's specifically asking about wedding, but I think just generally. So this is my problem. I'm with you, Glenn. I shoot video clips. Sometimes I see something that's like, oh, this is better suited to motion than a still photo. I record them. Thousands of them. I'm like, man, that's good footage. I'm going to use that someday. Never. I never use that footage. It just sits on the hard drive. Or when I do finally like, oh, you know what? I'm going to put together some video. It's like, for what? Like, I can share a photo, and I love people will write back and be like, you know, give me that feedback. Tell me that they liked it. That's kind of encouraging to me.
Mm-hmm.
But like video, it's like, am I going to post a video of like, check out this girl like acting as a senior? No, I'm just going to take still photos of a senior photo shoot. I get that, you know, wedding, of course you want some video of your wedding, but like just generally of like nature photography and stuff, I just don't see the appeal of just shooting video clips. So what is it? How can I get more interested in this?
Here's an idea. What if you ran 15 seconds of video for every single landscape composition you shot throughout the entire year, threw that footage into a folder, and then at the end of the year put together this compilation of all these beautiful places you've been? I think that that's a great way to kind of promote yourself as a landscape photographer, just as, you know, look at all these amazing places I've been. And then you can take that a step further and add a little bit of, you know, footage of you actually walking to the location or something. And it doesn't have to be very much, but just a little bit of that to kind of tie it all together. And then suddenly you have something that other landscape photographers are going to be really into, because it'll be like motivational and inspiring because of all this beautiful footage you've acquired. It's an idea. It's not something I've ever done, but it's a good idea.
But I think your 15-second thing is right on the mark. Video on Instagram is a fantastic way to just, people engage with video on Instagram more than they do with photos. They may sit and stare and they may like a photo, but when they see a video, they stop and they really look at it. For every shoot that I do, I always do, even if it's just a photo shoot, just 15 seconds. You know, you want to get some close-ups, you want to get some rack focus things, because 15 seconds on Instagram is very engaging, and you can throw some music behind it, and all of a sudden you have something very impactful. And
Right.
if you put a 2-second bumper on the front and a 2-second bumper on the back end, then all of a sudden you have a little mini commercial for your services. And
Exactly.
it's really effective.
And, you know, as a portrait photographer, I've seen some of the most beautiful slideshows where it's primarily just a whole bunch of photos, but then mixed in is like that 3 seconds of, like, if it's a newborn shoot, just 3 seconds of a baby's toes slowly coming into focus and wiggling around, or,
Yeah.
you know, just little things like the baby's hands or mom interacting with the baby, whatever. That little bit of motion just brings it all to life, and the tears just start to flow. And as a portrait photographer, that's really what you want, is just to make people cry. You can
Make
people
moms cry is Nick's goal
Exactly.
for the week. Not just anybody, but moms need to cry.
Exactly. They got to get it out, and it's your job to make them cry. And if you make them cry, they'll just throw money at you. But as a portrait photographer, think of it as a way to kind of just up your slideshow game. If you're doing those Animoto slideshows, throwing just a little bit of video footage, doesn't even have to be good, doesn't have to be much, but just have a little bit of motion. It just breathes life into the whole slideshow. So think of it that way if you're a portrait photographer.
An easy way also to get, if you really want a lot of impact in a short amount of time, is if you shoot in slow-mo. If you shoot 60 frames a second and then slow it down to 24 frames a second, everything becomes so much more dramatic and graceful, and there's a heightened element. I mean, 15 seconds of just like a senior portrait of a model just kind of moving around, all of a sudden it's got this elevated grandeur. Just
Right.
because you're shooting in slow-mo, and people, they have a different reaction to slow motion than they do with.
Yeah.
I think home videos have kind of ruined us for regular motion. We think of home videos when we just see video, but if you have something that's a little bit different, the production value is elevated, and we react to it differently.
And kids running around playing in the park during a family photo shoot that in high speed and then slow it down, and suddenly throw some music to it.
Oh yeah.
Mom's gonna cry. She's gonna cry every time, and it's always a good thing. It's a money making affair to make moms cry. Trust me.
Oh, this is getting twisted. All right, I wanted to talk a little bit about real estate photography, and this is something that many of you know I've been working on So in January this year, I decided I was going to open up a local photography business. This isn't something I have done for quite a few years. I spent all my efforts on improvephotography.com. But I wanted to be able to encourage people to kind of chase after whatever they want to accomplish in photography. And for many of you, you're wanting to earn some money from your photography, even if it's just fun money, even if it's just gear money, even if you plan to keep your day job. Most of us would like to turn a little bit of a profit with our cameras. Not everybody, but many, I think most of you at least. And so I decided I was going to take on real estate photography because I think real estate photography has much less competition than the portrait, certainly the wedding world. And I think it's a great job to do part-time and not full-time, which is what most of our listeners are interested in, even though we certainly do have lots of full-time photographers who listen as well. And so I started doing this in the month of January. I think I made $450, which was my very first month starting out, made $450. In February, I think it was closer to $700 that I made in February, the second month of this business existing. And I probably spent maybe 12, 14 hours total on the business in that month. So really promising results. It's not something that you're going to retire on, but it's really promising to be able to see that in very little time. I mean, 2 months starting the business to already be turning a significant profit. And so I've been learning a lot of things as I'm doing it. I knew nothing about real estate photography when I started. And so I just wanted to share with you a few tips that I have learned as I've been doing this. And I've been updating a lot on the website with more information about real estate photography. The first lesson that I learned this month is you have a significant advantage if you have a camera that can shoot in-camera HDR and sweep panoramas. I hadn't really thought about this. These are two features of cameras that just haven't really interested me much because in-camera HDR is not as good as, it's not like a normal HDR. They're usually better just to shoot the separate 3 photos and then you can put them together on the computer. But real estate photography is about speed. You can't spend 5 hours on each shoot or you're not going to turn a profit. It's high volume, low margin. And so doing things like in-camera HDR where I don't have to mask in the windows that are overexposed and I don't have to tone map and things like that. I can just, boom, shoot everything in camera and get the dynamic range is huge. And similarly, sweep panorama. So sweep panorama is like what your iPhone does. You start your exposure and you just move your camera across and it gives you a panorama. With a DSLR, it's different. You take a picture, move it a little, take a picture, move it a little, take a picture, and then you stitch them together in Lightroom or Photoshop. Well, disadvantage is, of course, time. This takes too long for a real estate photography shoot. And so I've found those features this month have been really useful to have sweep panorama and in-camera HDR. Have either of you guys played with that on your cameras?
Not really.
It's not a pro technique. We don't do that.
I know. I'm such a control freak that it would drive me nuts to have the camera do something that I could do separately.
Yep.
Because I like that extra control. But I totally agree with what you're saying that if you can do it faster, you're going to be better off shooting landscape or shooting real estate that way, because real estate agents, they want the photos like right now. They practically expect you to deliver them as soon as you get home sometimes. So anything you can do in camera and speed it up is going to be a good thing for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it seems so counterintuitive because what I always tell everyone, turn off your noise reduction, turn off your sharpening, because you've got this tiny little computer in your camera. Just wait till you get to your big computer at home and it does it better. But it does mean it's an extra step. You've got to merge those or you've got to somehow stitch those together. It does increase your workflow considerably. It does.
Yep.
Yeah, anyway, so those are a couple things that I've been looking at. They've really helped me quite a bit. Another lesson that I have learned this week is I have been wanting those kind of photography weather days, where it's nice, big, billowing clouds in the sky and stuff. And a couple times I've turned over photos to the client and the client responds and says, "Oh, I wish it was a prettier day when the shoot was." And I'm like,
I know.
Prettier day? This was like perfect photography weather. Are you kidding me? And as I'm working more and more with real estate agents, that's just not what they want. What they want is the nice big blue sky with a couple clouds in there. And that's appealing. And, as I've thought about it, I think they may be right to some extent. The photo is still going to look best during the blue hour. That exterior photo, the blue hour with the yellow lights of the house streaming, you can't beat that. It's just gorgeous. But if we're shooting during the day, I can see the appeal at least of this nice, pretty day, kind of like the Windows XP background kind of day, Yeah. I can see that appeal. And so it's got me thinking a little bit differently about the right weather for real estate.
Yep, they want Teletubby skies. they want the big blue skies with a couple puffy clouds. And as photographers, we're, especially us that shoot landscapes, we're wanting kind of those dramatic skies. And oftentimes those dramatic skies are a bit more ominous than what the real estate agent wants. So they want the nice, friendly, inviting Teletubby sky.
Right. They want great weather every day. Now, Jim, let me ask you, I know you've talked a little bit about sky replacement. Do you ever do sky replacement in any of these real estate photos, or is that just too time intensive for those kinds of shoots?
Yeah, I do. I'm definitely using sky replacements actually pretty often. A couple things that make the sky replacement a little bit of a harder technique to use for real estate is one, just time. Just takes time. But you can do them pretty quickly if you're efficient with it. And I posted a YouTube video a couple weeks ago on the Improved Photography YouTube channel showing you how in 30 seconds you can totally replace a real estate sky. There are some things about a real estate photo that make that replacement really fast if you're careful about the conditions. So do check that out. That's at YouTube. Just check for the Improved Photography channel. And then I have a 30-second sky replacement tutorial for real estate. And that was pretty useful. If you're getting into it more, then you're definitely going to want Nick's tutorial on how to do the full thing. So yes, I am using it. But it's another one of those just time-consuming things. Another problem that there is with sky replacements for real estate is if you do it in one photo, you kind of have to do it in all of them. Otherwise, the photos feel kind of disjointed. Like, boom, beautiful bright day, and then weird, it's raining. Like it just feels kind of disjointed when you have a series of 35 photos that if you do it in one, you kind of have to do it in all.
Exactly.
All right, another thing that I have learned from real estate photography that I've mentioned a couple times, but this week I've been doing a lot of the pole photography where you're just attaching the camera to the end of a painter's pole. It's better than a drone. I have used the DJI Phantom for the last month and a half, and now I've switched exclusively to the pole. The pole's just better. I'm getting better photos. It's more stable than the Phantom. It takes way less time than setting up the Phantom. There's not nearly as much liability with flying propellers and kids running around the neighborhood and stuff. The pole really does seem to be winning out for real estate. Again, if you're shooting acreage, you're going to want the drone. And if you're doing video, you're going to want the drone. But just for stills, boy, that pole is worth something.
Yeah, and you don't have to have any special permits to own a pole.
Right.
Or to photograph using a pole. And that's becoming more and more of an issue. And I'm sure they're going to start eventually cracking down on real estate photographers using them without permits. I'm assuming someday they will.
Once Congress gets its hand on those painters' poles, photography will never be the same. But it just makes a huge difference. The photo just commands attention when you just raise it up, about 2 times your height, 2 times the average height of a person, I would say. Maybe 15 feet is what we're going for. The photo, it just really captures you when it's from that little bit of a different perspective.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it kind of comes back to what we had talked about a little bit in weeks previous about just a different perspective makes a photo more interesting. So, shooting from 10 to 15 feet in the air is a different perspective than we normally see with our eyes. Thus, it makes the photo more interesting and more attention worthy when you're scrolling through a bunch of photos and then boom, there's one with a different perspective. I'm going to look at that one. And that's just kind of the psychology behind it.
Truly. Now, are you framing up that shot on the pole? Are you using the Wi-Fi app on that, or are you just kind of putting it up there and eyeballing it, and then using a remote release?
I have done both. I have on my to-do list today, this week, to set up the camera app with my new Fuji X Pro 2 that came in the mail this week. But most of the time, I'm just using a 10-second timer to do it. It just doesn't take any time to just set a 10-second timer, hold it up, snap, and you're done. Because we don't need real high resolution anyway, I'm shooting too wide and too far away from the house and cropping in anyway on the photo, because I don't want to spend the time of like, I want to get my composition a little to the left. I don't need high resolution, so I'm just going to crop it. It takes way less time.
Yeah. Oh, actually, it takes about 10 seconds at time.
Yeah, well, it takes about 10 seconds.
We don't have time for those 10-second timers.
That's right.
2-second timers only.
All right. Well, we want to get on to talk about some more topics. Nick is going to talk a little bit about death and landscape photography. But before we do that, I want to take a second and tell you about my mattress that has made the Improved Photography podcast possible. So this is a true story. This was, I don't know, maybe 5 weeks ago, before they decided to advertise on the podcast. I started going to all the different mattress stores, and I told my wife I was just going insane if one more mattress salesman had me lay down on the mattress that felt the same as all the others, and told me that it was an investment to spend $4,000, $5,000 on a mattress. I was just going nuts. I was not going to spend $4,000 on a mattress. It was driving me crazy. And so my sister-in-law told me about Casper. Casper makes one awesome mattress, and they make it in the United States, and it's great. It's an excellent memory foam with several different layer mattresses. I honestly have been sleeping better. I've been telling my friends about it, and then I saw that they got an ad here on the podcast, and I was just thrilled because it really is just an excellent company. So and now you can get $50 toward the purchase of any mattress from Casper by going to casper.com/improve and using code IMPROVE at checkout. So that's casper.com/improve, CASPER. And thank you all thank you to Casper for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. And by Squarespace. Squarespace is the company that I use for my photography website, as well as Nick. I know you're using Squarespace for your photography website. And Nick, what is it that you like about your Squarespace site?
Well, currently, I've started using the store more and more and more. So now I'm selling my workshop dates through the store. I'm selling wallpapers and backgrounds for computers through my store. And it's really, really easy. If I can do it, you can probably do it too, because, I don't have the attention span to sit there and write code. That's never been Nick. So I'm able to keep my website updated. I get asked frequently who makes my website, and I always take a little bit of pride saying, well, actually, I made that. And then I tell them it's through Squarespace, and they're like, oh, well, anybody can do Squarespace.
No longer impressed.
Exactly. But the store features are really easy, and I've been using them more and more with zero problems. I've never had anybody have issues with it, and if there has been an issue, it's because of my own forgetfulness or something related to it. So I've really been liking the store feature.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm loving my Squarespace site as well. When you decide to sign up for Squarespace, make sure to use offer code IMPROVE to get 10% off your first purchase and to show your support for Improved Photography. And we thank Squarespace for continuing to support the Improved Photography podcast. Well, Nick, you want to talk a little bit about death today, death and landscape photography. How does that happen?
Well, death is just something I've been thinking about a lot lately. No,
you turned 36 this week, and you're like, the end is near. It's almost over. Yeah. The writing's on the wall.
So, unfortunately, sometimes death and landscape photography go hand in hand. I wanted to talk a little bit about the pros and cons of doing landscape photography alone or with a friend or with a landscape buddy. So, a lot of us landscape photographers, we like landscape photography to kind of get away from people. That's kind of the point. If we wanted to be around people, we would be doing street photography or portraits or weddings or something other than going out into nature away from people typically. So I when I'm doing landscape photography, it's kind of my zen time. It's my time to like be alone and decompress and, be one with nature, man. And so that's kind of one of the pros is just getting away from people, and it's a great reset button for me. But there's kind of some cons that come with going and doing landscape photography alone, and one of the biggest cons is dying. Dying like the thing is, the reason I bring this up is that you can go out, and if you're hiking into a spot that is beautiful and typically isn't really heavily trafficked, like you go into a waterfall that's fairly remote and you do something as simple as twist your ankle with nobody coming in there, like dying it becomes on the table just from a twisted ankle. It doesn't take much of an injury when you're off the beaten path to become a real serious problem. Before you know it, you're going to be cutting your arm off with a Swiss Army knife because nobody's going to be there to come save you. So doing it alone definitely has some pros and some cons. Pros being that you get to get away from people for a little bit, decompress. Cons being that it doesn't take much of a injury or a fall or anything to become a serious life-threatening event. So yeah, it's one of those things that like you kind of have to weigh the pros and the cons of each place you go to. Like another thing that I'm always thinking about is if I go somewhere with a whole bunch of people and something amazing happens, they're all going to have my shot. And I hate that. Like, if I go to Palouse Falls, like I've done in the past, and this amazing sky happens, like has happened in the past, unfortunately, there was another photographer there that got a very similar shot to me. And because there was multiple people there, we both have the same shot. And it's like, it makes my shot not quite as cool because somebody else is out there and has the exact same amazing sky over Palouse Falls. So one of the cons of going somewhere with multiple people is that they're going to have the same shots you have. And that drives me nuts. That's one of the reasons I travel alone a lot of times. But having said that, there's some spots where I've hiked into like a 1.5 mile hike, get up there, and the trail down to the water so I can photograph the waterfall from this particular angle is too steep and too slick for me to feel comfortable, because I know I could get down it. Like getting down a really slick trail is no problem at all. You can probably make record time because you're going to slide the whole way down, but getting back out of there is a problem. And if you have nobody there to help you out, you're just going to be at the bottom being like, hey, like you don't want to be the guy yelling, hey, at the bottom of some crevice. So I guess what I'm saying is, depending on where you're going, there's definite advantage to taking somebody with you, even if you don't really want to go with somebody else. Another thing is that watching somebody else, do their style of photography can kind of be inspirational at times, because a lot of times other people have different methods than you and they see things differently than you, and seeing what they're seeing can be like, oh, well, I didn't think of that. That's kind of cool. And it can be kind of inspirational to see like some of the ideas and creativity of others. And just see what they're doing that's different than the way you do it. And that can kind of be inspirational as well. So I guess the point of my rant is just to kind of analyze, like when you are going out to do landscape photography, is it the kind of place where maybe you shouldn't do it alone? Or is it the kind of place where you want to do it alone and maybe hopefully get like the only shot of some amazing piece of weather that comes through or something like that? So yeah. What do you guys think? Do you like to travel alone, or do you like to take a group of your?
Well, speaking as, I have been the guy at the bottom of the crevasse yelling for help before. I have absolutely been that guy. I was in Hawaii. This is years ago. I wanted to get some shot. It was in Kauai. I wanted to like hike up and get some shot of a really cool waterfall. It was remote. It was like a 7-mile hike in, and I just followed the riverbed all the way up. And I figured, well, I'll find my way back down. I'll just follow the riverbed down. And then I got there, took some gorgeous pictures, and I started coming down. And then it started raining, and that one little riverbed turned into 15 different rivulets that got me completely lost. And the thing about being just human nature is you don't realize you're in an emergency until it's way too late. And the last thing you want to do when you're all alone.
No, that's part of being a guy.
Yeah,
you don't realize you're in an emergency until it's way too late. After your wife has been saying, "No, Jim, we really need some help."
Yeah, it's really hard as a man, even if you're completely by yourself, to yell out for help. And that's a really tough thing to do. And so my one piece that I can chime in is bring a whistle. Because when that time comes, and the time will come when you're like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I have to scream for help.
At least you won't have to like scream like an idiot. You'll at least have a civilized whistle to tell people that you can't handle this.
Exactly. A whistle goes so much further. You will blow out your voice in 15 minutes if you're just screaming at the top of your lungs. And a whistle can be heard much further. You save your voice, and it's a much better piece of equipment than your vocal cords.
And if you're 7 miles in, nobody can yell that loud. You're going to be yelling for a while before anybody hears you. A whistle might actually carry that distance, but yelling, nope, it's not going to happen. Yep. So that's pretty much what I had to talk about. What do you got?
I want to talk about sharing versus stealing photos online and on social media. I was
preferred to share.
Sharing is much better. I mean, I always thought that it's something that photographers especially understood very well. When you share a photo on social media, when you share a photo on Facebook, when you share a photo on Instagram, you still retain the copyright and the ownership of that photo. And it's great. Like, I love it. If I post a photo on my Facebook wall and somebody really loves it and they share it on their Facebook wall and it gets shared 185 times, that's absolutely fantastic. I can't be more excited about that. But I think there's something in, maybe it could be a generational thing with the advancement of technology. I think there are a lot of people who don't understand the difference between sharing a photo from someone else's page and then taking a photo from someone's website and sharing it on your own feed. That's stealing. I mean, that's absolutely stealing. And I don't know, and I don't know why there aren't more people that are aware of the difference. And the comment that I saw, I was commenting on a thread of another photographer who had her photograph stolen by another website on Facebook. The comment that was underneath the comment was, she should feel lucky that her photo was seen by so many people. She should be paying that person for sharing her photo. And that just blew my mind. There's a huge difference between sharing and stealing, a huge difference. And the big difference is consent. That's basically it. If I put a photo on Facebook, I am saying, please, share it, link back to me, use it on Facebook as much as possible, as much as you like. It's a very different thing than someone taking a photo from my website, uploading it onto their feed, and then getting a claim or whatever from it. That's unauthorized use of my image, and that's the thing that bugs me.
The minute that the image has to be downloaded, that's when the line kind of gets crossed. If you share it to Facebook from the website, that's great. That's driving traffic to the website. If you share it from Facebook to Facebook, that's great. If you share it on Pinterest from a website or somewhere, that's great. But as soon as you right click and download, that's when the waters get muddy. I get this asked. I get asked this all the time. Like, aren't you afraid that people are going to steal your photos off of Facebook and take them and call them their own or print them or something? Yeah. And my reaction to that is twofold. Like, for one, I take so many photos that if one of them got stolen and I missed out on a single crappy print that came from Facebook, I don't really care. They're not going to be able to print that any larger than 8x10 anyways, and it's still going to look junky. Or, somebody claiming it to be claiming that it's their own photo. I'm not too worried about that either because, a simple Google search and I can find those photos that are important to me. So typically I don't care. I enjoy people seeing my work on Facebook, so I
Mhm.
don't let the fear of somebody stealing my image get in the way of that. Like,
Yeah.
the whole point I'm on social media is so I can be like, look what I did today. Look at this. Look at this. That's kind of the whole point. And so, if that means more to me than the potential for one of my images to be stolen or printed or something.
But you also have a very unique. I mean, I've noticed that your watermark is kind of built into the composition of your photographs. So there, I mean, it's a really. It used to be watermarks were this big ugly thing that used to be right in the middle of the photo, and they detract. And I can't stand that. Why put up a photo if you're going to make it look ugly?
Right.
But I really like what you've done with putting your branding into the composition and into the layout of the photo. I think is a brilliant way to keep your brand out there and protect the photo.
Yeah, I thought about it for probably a good solid 15 seconds before I did it. I've really put a lot of thought into my watermark. I was like, that looks good enough. Whatever. So that was the deep talk that I had with myself about my watermark. but thank you.
Yeah, nice.
Well, in every episode, we like to leave you with a few doodads, or in Nick's case, doo-doos of the month. Those of you who are on the Improved Photography Facebook group may have got that joke. Nobody else, just forget about it. Just don't worry about that. Anyway, my doodad for this week is the Shutterbug magazine. I am really excited. This is cool for me. It doesn't happen every day, but I have 2 photos that are going to be on the cover of Shutterbug magazine, I think in the May issue. So you go ahead and subscribe to Shutterbug magazine. Actually, it really is a great magazine. It is one of the last few great magazines out there, and subscribing for a whole year to Shutterbug magazine was really cheap. Let's see how much it was. It was $17. Gives you 12 issues to the magazine. So pretty cool. I subscribed on Amazon. You can get just Shutterbug magazine, but it's pretty cool. I've been liking the magazine. Has some good stuff. So that's my doodad of the week.
Jim would also like to add that he's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, right.
That's awesome, man. That's really
fantastic.
That's pretty cool. I was really excited about that. That's fun.
cool. Okay, so my doodad this week, no doo-doos, just doodads this week.
See, I have to explain it, otherwise people are going to be thinking I'm trying to make fun of you. So
Okay.
it was Nick's birthday this last week. I've mentioned this like 3 times on the podcast. Nick's starting to blush and everything. And so anyway, I went up to Washington to celebrate with Nick. I brought my family up, and so I thought, I've got to get Nick some kind of cool present. And so we've been joking offline with some of the hosts of the podcast about a bidet. The bidet is clearly the best device ever created. Like everybody, international listeners who are listening right now are like, of course, what else do you use? In America, we use paper. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. And a bidet is just a refined, beautiful device. Anyway, there's one I got on Amazon for Christmas because my brothers and I were joking about it. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So anyway, that's what was Nick's birthday for the week. So anyway, that's where the joke's coming from.
And I've already decided that I'm going to change the power level settings, like the little icons next to the power level settings, to emojis. So the first one's going to be just like a smiley face, and then after the smiley face, it's going to be like the straight face, and then after that, it's going to be like the open face with like the O face, like, and then after that, it's just going to be tears. And so that's going to be the new power level for the bidet, but. So where were we? Oh, yes, we were talking photography. So my doodad this week is rope. I don't know why it took me so long to think of this, but I'm going to start packing a length of rope with me when I go
What are you
shooting
gonna do with
landscape
that?
photography. When I hike into those waterfalls and I'm afraid to go down that slope, I'm no longer going to be afraid to go down that slope because I'm going to have rope with me. Tie it around a tree, string it down the hill, and then I'll have a way to get back up the hill should it prove too steep and slick for me to get back up. So instead of friends, I got rope. And I can find more rope than I can find friends. So that's my doodad this week.
Nice.
I see
nice.
your doodad and raise you a doodad. I'm bringing MacGyver with a rubber band.
Nice.
And a rubber band and a toothpick. You have a missile launcher then.
Exactly.
That's all you need.
Steven, how about you?
My doodad this week is it's the Aputure Halo. It's a high CRI LED ring light that fits right onto the front of your lens. I'm crazy about it because, well, it's a constant light. I use it for both photo and video. I think LED lights are going through a revolution right now. For a long time, the problem with LED lights is you would get a magenta spike or a green spike, and the color rendition wasn't very great. But the new technology in LED lights gives them a CRI of 95 plus, which is pretty darn close to balanced daylight.
What's
so
CRI? I don't know what that is.
CRI,
I speak Kelvin. I don't speak CRI.
Right. So CRI is color rendering index. So when you're looking at any kind of artificial lights, you want to look at how the color is being rendered on all aspects of the spectrum. So a lot of fluorescent lights will have a spike in the green. You'll just have a little bit hotter spike on the green aspect of the color spectrum. LED lights can be a little bit more, or have been a little bit more magenta. And obviously, when you're looking at like your indoor house lights, you're going to get a little bit more. The tungsten lights are more yellow or orange. It's just the way it renders. If you want a really clean white light, and I tend to think of 5500 Kelvin daylight as that's my baseline for pure white. These LED lights are really great. They're pretty darn close. You get a small spike in the magenta, nothing that can't be corrected in Lightroom or Photoshop, and it's pretty darn close to daylight. And if you're doing macro photography, it fits right on the front of your lens. You can do either one side or the other. So if you want these really dramatic macro photos where you're just getting a directional light, you can get that. Or if you really want to fill, you just do the whole thing and you can adjust the power. I like to use it for video because a lot of times we might have lit the scene, but the actor might move in or out of their lighting. And this just gives a little bit more fill. It gives a nice ring in the eyes, which, is a very specific look. For music videos and stuff, that halo ring in the eyes is a really, really kind of stylized look. And I like it just to put a little bit more light on the face. It just helps when I'm doing post-production.
That's cool.
And it's $35. It's cheap.
That's awesome. In all of my rap videos that I do, I always have ring lights.
Nice.
It makes my eyes bling.
Yeah, it goes with the grill. If you're going to be wearing a grill, something like with lots of platinum or gold or diamonds on your grill, like this is the way to really make it pop.
Nice.
That's what's great.
Very nice.
Hey, we're giving all kinds of advice this week on the podcast. It's not just about photography anymore. Anyway, you can check out the doodads of the week, get links to them, including the doo-doo of the week, and at improvephotography.com/doodads. We made a special page there where it has all of them for 2016, all on the same page if you were looking for a link there. So check that out at improvephotography.com/doodads. Well, thank you guys for joining me. You can find Nick Page at nickpagephotography.com and Stephen Nolly at magiclanternshooter.com. And it was good to talk with you guys. We will catch you in another 7 days.